Okay, Evelyn, great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You were part of the school games back in February, and you actually won the first school games. So you placed top two in that game, and you generated over like $81,000 for your community, like the digital offer builders, which is absolutely insane. And in today's interview, I want to dive into that as well, but I also want to talk a little bit about like your story, like how you got started and where it
Mhm.
all began. So that would be my first question to you. Like, why did you even get into entrepreneurship in the first place? And why did you start it?
Absolutely great question. So I've been an online marketer since I was 20. I'm now 34. And I didn't think that I would become one. I was always a writer and I wanted to be an author. And I started to work for voluntarily for a radio station and started to, writing a little bit for shows for them. And so the person that was working there, I was really looking up to him, and he always told me, like, you cannot make money with this. So you should go and you should study something like law or business that makes you money, so you can finance that passion of writing, right? So, and I believed that to be true. Started studying law, and then I had a back injury. I was always working as a waitress ever since I was 15. And I had a back injury, so I couldn't do it for a while. And I was looking for an office job. And then I saw that there was an online shop, and online shops were a new thing back then, right? So that was really cool and exciting. And I had a fashion blog. So, because, writing. So, um, and yeah, I applied. I did their descriptions. I was relatively quick, like done with that. And then at that moment, they were splitting up with their PR agency. And so I saw an opportunity to pitch what I would do there. And, that was a blog with giveaways and like everything that I knew from my fashion blog. And they gave me a chance to do that. And then very soon Facebook ads came around. It was the first time possible in Austria to run them. And so I could learn on other people's money, and I was immediately hooked. I absolutely loved, this game of figuring out. And I don't know if when you started running Facebook ads, because I know you also do it, but it was so dirt cheap. Like it was so easy also as well. Like
Yeah.
there was not much you could do wrong. And so I really loved that. And then I started studying marketing on the weekend. So I knew, I have the opportunity from this one business, but eventually I want to do that like long term. And then I climbed the corporate ladder. I was switching then to a wholesale company where my grandma actually worked. And my grandma raised me like from when I was a teenager, when my parents split. They had a really nasty divorce. This was also where we had a really kind judge. And that's why I actually got into law, because I was like, oh, maybe she really helped our family. Maybe I could be like somebody helping families. If I have to do something for money, that would be what I would want to do. But I have really close relationship with my grandma, and she was, for back in the days as a woman, she was really like killing it, because she was a professional purchaser for this really big company. And so that was not usual. And when I grew up, I was listening to her stories. So when the company was hiring, I thought I should actually apply, right? And kind of follow the footsteps of my grandma. And I took over the e-commerce department, grew it from 0 to 12 to 1 million the first year, and then 5 million in the second year. Did that by acquiring Amazon as a customer. So we were a vendor then. And then I saw like a little thing in their system that they would order end of life products for almost any price. And so I saw an opportunity there to basically, because we had a huge supplier network, right, that were my customers, but I was like, all of them have like these really old stores with these really old Legos laying around, right? And people are online paying a lot to get their hands on those things, and they don't know it, but they're sitting on like a treasure chest, basically. So I actually wanted to buy back from the people that were buying from us, so I could sell it for a higher price online where there was a market for those end of life products. And so my boss didn't want to do that. I found somebody to give me money to do that. And then we basically grew that from 0 to 12 million in 9 months. And then Amazon was like, you're the most expensive vendor in all Europe. We're done working with you. And so I was like, oh. And in that, time I quit like my job and everything. And, and then I had like my whole identity crushed, right? Because I started to identify as this entrepreneur and everything. And then from one day to the other, it was over, and I exited like with a profit. So it was great, but it felt like a complete failure and like losing my face. And I don't know, in America, I think US, it's not as harsh as in Europe, but here it's like when you fail like a business, like that is probably like one of the worst stigmas here still, or at least in Austria. I don't know if how it's in your country, but for me, it was like really, feeling like a failure. And then I started traveling a little bit and going back to running ads for people. Social media marketing agency was the easiest thing to do, right? Because I had been doing that on the side anyways for professors that just asked me. And so I came back to that. Then I got unexpectedly pregnant and I was like, okay, I can't do one like service work anymore, but let me sell the knowledge that I have. And that then led to low ticket because I was comfortable charging higher prices for done for you services because I could prove the work, right? And say, okay, this is how many hours I worked. Here's how much ROAS we made. But for when I was passing on my knowledge, I saw like there's still so much work that the person needs to do, right? So it just didn't feel like it's a high ticket. And so that brought me down the membership direction. Also because one of the first really good online products I bought was Facebook ads that convert by Cat Howell to get back into the game. And that was a membership model. So that kind of stuck with me that that's the way to go. And then, memberships grew. And then soon people say, can you teach me how to grow a membership because you're doing this? So it's like very much like this, doing something and then passing it on.
Yeah.
That's kind
interesting.
of how we got
There's
here.
so many interesting parts there. Like how you started out with writing that I love it. Like you started with a passion and then you start to help others. And I'm super interested in that part. Like how were you able to like provide such good results for them? I guess that it has to do something with your knowledge of like building offers and kind of what you're proposing right now as well to like create very good offers for people. I would love to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then also like becoming pregnant and like family and how do you like grow a business with like, that's also a huge thing.
I think that this is something where I might lose or I might lose the person listening because I never had a problem with passion. I have a problem that I want to live so many lives to do all the things. I'm a very enthusiastic person. And so I can be excited about everything. Right. So, and if it's a challenge, I'm very ambitious, I guess. That's also a thing. Like if it's challenging, I want to figure it out. And that just lights me up. I love to compete, but not like I'm not an elbows person at all. Like I'm probably like one of the most, like I try to include everybody in this, right? So more like animating people to really compete. I think there's beauty in learning what you're capable of. And I think that that's what I was always passionate about was I wanted to touch everything from a place of, let me see how good I can get at this, right? So I don't know, like even when I was doing dumb work, when I was an employee, and so, where you update Excel spreadsheets with the data and you copy paste it from what I was like, how fast can I do this? And so I think I found always like a way to make things exciting for me and find like reward in doing the thing. So I never had a problem with passion. I always loved, one of the first games I played online was Taxi Tycoon. I don't know, there was always something that brought me really great joy about building things and doing things and being creative. And so that just came kind of naturally. And I think that's also something that can bring people great joy if they experience themselves like that.
Do you use like your passion and your interest a lot in your like decision making, kind of how you guide yourself?
I believe that was a little bit of societal layers that I put on myself, where I was actually restricting myself away from a place that gives you a lot of drive and energy, is when you really allow yourself to lean into what you truly enjoy. And so when I started to build my online businesses, the first thing I truly enjoyed was like the Facebook ads portion, right? And so I realized that, okay, I'm losing a lot of people there because I might be a little bit too advanced. So let me dumb things down. Let me help people to do more foundational work, etc. And so I realized that in doing that, I was also sacrificing a big portion of what I felt like what I could uniquely gift, which is, really geeking out around messaging, really geeking out around packaging and offer. And with the offer builders, I basically allowed myself to to go back into embracing geeking out about that and being like really, really detailed with that. And I think that the success kind of tells the right story of Sam said that to me, actually. He was like, people should not look for what communities people want to buy. They should build the community they want to be a part of. And I feel like with the offer builders, I really allowed myself to do that. And when because after the games, things were going down. Like I lost like 350 members in that month, right? And now I'm up like 350 members. And I think what happened there was that I fell into this fallacy again of I'm getting feedback and I want to start to please people, right? So I see, for some, this is like way too advanced. And so I started again to try to be everything for everyone there and help everyone out with everything. And just people were falling away. And then I was like, okay, what if it was the opposite? What if it was okay that the people or some people will fall away right now? But when I'm lean more and more into what I'm actually wanting this place to be, eventually the people that truly resonate with that, they will stay forever. And I will be able to attract really the right type of people, because I followed up with people and I just did a big exit survey. Like, why did you leave? And especially the ones that I didn't want to see leave, like Kai, for example. We talked about him. Like, I was like, why is he leaving? And he was like, yeah, I'm too advanced for this. And I was like, dang it, because I'm not allowing myself, because I'm afraid to lose people, not allowing myself to really talk about the deeper things and really embrace those. So I think for me, that is what I've learned now. And also the numbers say like it works, and also the quality of the group and also the conversations. It says like, okay, this is really becoming what it's meant to be. And I hope people dare to lean into it. And I'm saying this mostly as a reminder for myself, like really dare to lean. Like even when you look at Sam and Alex, right, when they're sitting, like Sam always has his same shirt, Alex always has his same shirt, and they trust like that. Them showing up now once a week for Q&A, they're like, that's a ton of value, right? And that's enough. And for us that are their ideal clients, we're like, yes, that's a ton of value. And for us, that's like so good and so more than enough.
Yeah.
And I think that this is something that I would love if people could allow themselves, is like, come as you are, right? Show up, give what you can give and want to give in the way you can and want to give it. And that will ultimately create this really loyal tribe around you. But you have to allow yourself to also endure it when people break away that are not a good fit for that, because that feels painful, right? That feels like, oh, we're not good enough or we're making mistakes when people churn. But there's actually like a true mismatch sometimes. And the more you try to prevent the mismatch from happening, the more you dilute yourself and the more you're at stake of losing the people that truly should be part of your journey, like moving forward.
100%. And that's something I've learned from or heard from like very creative people as well, like artists. And they always say that if you just create something that you truly, truly love yourself, then other people will start to resonate with that as well. But if you're trying to please others and do something that you think that they will want or that they will like, normally it doesn't work out as good.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
And that is so true. I think that is so true. Because you're trying to anticipate what they will want from you, and then you try to create what you think that they will want from you, when all they really want is more of your essence, of what comes so genuinely from you. So that's a really great observation. It completely messes up the creative process if you care too much. Actually, you should care a little bit less about it, counterintuitively.
100%.
So I noticed this about people that have a little bit this, like Kai, how he has set up his group. It's just top of mind because I just joined, and he's like, the fastest onboarding. I know why you're here. You know why you're here. This is what you do. And it's like 17 seconds or something. And it also has this, like, if you don't like this, you're probably in the wrong group kind of vibe. And I love this so much. There's something that is so attractive about not wanting to please your members. for me as a member, when I'm in a community and the owner doesn't try to please me, I actually feel more like I'm belonging, because I also feel like they're so confident in the value that they deliver. So I can also be more confident in the value that they deliver. So in a very real sense, it adds a lot of reassurance that you're in the right place.
100%. And that's why I think authenticity is just blowing up on the internet now as well, especially on YouTube. Like raw format videos, just pure authenticity, just sharing like how it actually is, not this fancy editing and layers. But authenticity is starting to blow up on the internet. And it makes sense that why not then just apply that to our communities as well and how we run our businesses as well. It makes complete sense. But then for other people listening as well, like how long did it take for you, like when you started your entrepreneurial journey, to like actually make like a full-time income from this thing that you were passionate about doing?
I think I was at that point always extremely fast, and then I blew things up again. So when I first started my business, it was while I was studying, and it was just so I can invoice my professors. So they, like when I studied, we had one online marketing class, but that was, Google SEO, like basically because Facebook ads were just relatively new. And so I just constantly, I was like, I want to say something. I want to say something. I have an idea. I want to say something. So I was basically like, super, like also wanted to share everything because I was so excited about the things that we did. And then the professors approached me. They were like, yeah, by the way, I'm working with this client. Can I hire you to do our social media kind of business? Because for them, everything was like the same. If you knew Facebook ads, you could do everything online, including installing their printer. Like that was the mindset, right? So you're the online person, so you can do everything. And so they just started to give me all kinds of jobs, and I just started doing them. And so that I'm able to invoice them, I actually started the business. So if you want to say, I was profitable from the first month of my business, but because I got like these referrals basically. But that was, years of kind of just working up. And then also I think no matter what community you're a part in, and that community for me was my studies, you can always contribute value. And if you're the valuable person, you'll always stand out, and people would just approach you and say, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And then you just have to say, sure, here's my hourly rate. Does that work for you? And they're like, yeah, that works for me. So it kind of was really, I didn't have to manufacture anything. It was happen organically, And then obviously, like when you start doing websites, it's like, oh yeah, who did your website? Evelyn, go to her. Like, so I was getting a lot of word of mouth. So I was also really spoiled from that perspective. And then that business blew up happened. So I fired all clients because I was like now really busy with this fast growing company. And so after that, when I was kind of then starting to travel, because I a little bit wanted to flee the country because, my identity was a little bit scattered after that. Then I was in Canada, and I had no connections. I knew nobody. But immediately, like the first thing we did was, okay, we need a short-term rental because hotel is too expensive. And so there was this guy, and he noticed I have a German accent, and I started speaking German with him because he was a builder and he built like in Germany. And I was immediately like, yeah, do you have a website for this short-term rental? Because I really think you should need one. So the first thing I did in Canada was exchanging basically that we can stay for free in his condo if I make his website, right? So I was always like super resourceful when it comes to business, I guess. And just not, daring to ask like, hey, I can do this. Do you need this by any chance? And if they say no, I was like, do you know somebody who can need this or who needs this? So I think I was just always really, really resourceful with that. But then happened the period when I started the business. My partner, now husband, he actually started to apply on Upwork for jobs. And he took the sales course. So I was really proud of him how he did that. And then I would just deliver the projects, right? So that was a funnel, that was an ad campaign setup, whatever. And so I also got the first time in touch with this whole coaching industry that is like much further in Canada and US than it is in Austria. I was really fascinated by that because when I saw their ad accounts, I was like, they're doing such a bad job because they're overpaying like so much for the customer. But for them, it didn't matter because they had so high tickets that, they could afford spending so much. And I was like, well, why don't they sell like a digital product. And so I already had the idea of self-liquidating, because we would also work with, in the jewelry industry, we had this one ring. It was like an infinity ring. And so that would bring all the customers in the door at break even, because that was the thing people really wanted. So I was like, okay, what is their break even thing? Like, how do they break even? It seems like they're like wasting so much money. And so I had the hunch that there's some things from e-commerce that could really be translated into the coaching world. And so that started to blow up really quickly. We had $15,000 worth of retainer clients in the first month of doing it. Then I found out I was pregnant, and then everything just crashed. Like I crashed because my first trimester of pregnancy was terrible. I couldn't even like eat something. And it was the first time also in my life that I could physically not function, like to a point where, usually like the creativity would flow. I would be able to just solve things, but that was just, I was completely cut off from that. Like I was really not functioning well. And with that, I got a lot of anxiety because I wanted to deliver on those projects. So I basically told my partner we have to cancel and refund everyone because I'm not capable at the moment. And then after that, I started to do gig work on Fiverr. I shared a screenshot of that recently, and I was just starting to undercut myself and self-sabotage. Like everything before that in my life I touched was turning to gold, and then everything was turning to shit. Like it was just, I was so scared because I was wanting to be a mom for so long. And with my former fiance, we had tried for 6 years. And so I already had given up on that dream. And then my new partner that I just knew, like 6 months, and I had one accident, and he was like, should we do something? And I was like, nah, you think like it's so easy to get pregnant. It's not. And it was like, I was immediately pregnant. And this was such a dream for so long that I wanted to make it perfect, and I wanted to be a good mom. And so I wanted to have it all figured out when my kid comes. And that scarcity and that urgency made me make one dumb decision after the other. Like so, because I was not coming from the right place, right? I was coming from a place, I need to make money tomorrow. Although, at that point I still had savings, but I was like, we cannot chip away our savings because when my son comes, I need to have time for him and I need to have it all figured out. And I was so frantic that I was blowing everything up to the point where I was even buying a course from a guru and blew out like the last $12,000 in savings. Like I really was, and I think like I had to put myself with the back against the wall, because deep down I always wanted to build a personal brand, but I didn't think I have what it takes. Don't speak the language. Don't, look the part. So I thought that I'm not like the person that can build a brand. So I was hid behind doing the done for you work. And then after I was like, okay, maybe this is the sign to just go all in now. And then it potentially worked. So then I did my zero to audience, grew a free Facebook group from 0 to 1,000 members, and pre-sold a one-to-one coaching program and did 10K in that month. And then after that, kept nurturing, growing. And 6 months into that, I launched my first membership. And then from there, I just built memberships.
I love it. This is the part of the journey that I love to hear, like when it actually goes good and then everything just crashes, like in the hero's journey, right? It just goes to like completely sideways. That's so funny. And it just makes sense as well, right? If you lost all of your energy, like you're building a human inside of you. So it just makes sense that like you're just working so hard on the business and then these things happen. Super interesting.
Because you feel like you can always do things, and then you realize like you're human, and I also have from that experience so much more empathy for people that, build a business. They have a chronic illness, right? Or they have a certain age, or they have, they are the sole provider for their family already, right? Or they take care of a loved elderly one. So there's so many people with so many different challenges in life. And I think I didn't understand how privileged I was. I was a young single person that had basically all day to do this, right? So when we look at other people who have to build on the side, and I now have a lot more empathy for how quickly you can move. And I think that's where people need to give themselves a lot more credit, to say, and because when you start to put the pressure, it just, you sabotaging everything. That's also what I really learned. It's like when you say it has to work at a, like, I'm the biggest opponent from telling people to quit their job or fire their boss, right? Can you put yourself in a worse situation because then you have to make it work? And that kind of pressure, even I wasn't able to take. And I'm really good under pressure, I would say. So.
And it's funny that you say that, because that is exactly what Sam said in the interview that I did with him as well. I asked him, like, what would you recommend to somebody who's just starting out? He was like, get a job so that you can like get away from the stress, and so that you have some income coming in. And then the business decisions that you make are like things that you actually want to do. And then when that start makes more money, then you can quit your job, type of thing.
Yeah.
Which is basically exactly what you're saying as well. Like, don't be in this position where bunch of scarcity, bunch of urgency, because you're not going to make the right decisions.
Ever nothing worked for me was when I was in that situation. So I think that really should tell you something. It's like, that is the worst spot to put yourself in. And also think about it. If your community doesn't have to make money, and if you actually enjoy it, how are you showing up differently? How are you building things differently? How do you dream, right? If you're doing the work for the sake of doing it, because you enjoy it, right? Because those are the things you truly want to talk about, not because you think those are the things people will pay you money for. You build something that is so much better and so much more needed. So 100% agree with Sam on that. And there's ways that you can also get like a job that already brings you the skill, right? So do done for you work where you learn about digital marketing, right? 100%. Or help out in communities and see if you can get a side gig from that. Like, there's so many jobs that you can take where you actually learn so much while you do the job kind of automatically.
100%. Like becoming a community manager or doing like sales calls for communities, building up your own monthly recurring revenue by just piggybacking on it. Like, there's so many opportunities out there. Yeah. But something I wanted to ask you as well, and this is something that I asked Sam. I don't have kids yet, but it's getting closer to it. And I asked Sam, like, do you feel like kids has made you, like, how has that impacted your entrepreneurship? And he said that it has made him a lot better entrepreneur by a ton. So it would be very interesting to hear your answer to that question as well, because you had such a hard time during the pregnancy. But now, like, how do you feel like having kids or a kid is like impacting your results in your entrepreneurial journey?
So I think that I have built the business that I needed as a mom, right? So it allows me to show up for people while also showing up as a mother completely. So I'm having like right now we're having the podcast, right? And then after that, I will pick up Danny from kindergarten and we will spend the whole afternoon together, right? We typically go for a long walk with the dog. Then we go to the store and I give him like a little surprise egg. And then we will come home and we will play. And then I will bring him to the bathtub. And I will have the whole, and then he can watch one episode. And in that episode, I will do the most urgent, like catching up kind of things. And then when he's in bed, I will work a couple hours more, like from my treadmill, get my workout in. And for me, it's like, it's a perfect day, right? Because I can fit everything around making those memories with him. And that not to be said that there are days where it's like terribly challenging and where I'm living very close to my dad and he helps me out, right? So I bring him to his grandpa and they do something like the whole day and then I can just catch up on things. I also have to say that I'm very often alone because my husband has to be in Canada. So I'm basically like half a year single parenting as well. And so that can get hard, right, on some days. And also because your child goes through phases. And if you have a boy, they have like testosterone pushes. So they can have like really challenging days as well. And I think overall, it made me a better entrepreneur from many perspectives. The first thing is it gave me true purpose. It also puts like guardrails on and qualifiers on what is the goal, right? So when I look at, for example, at Alex Ramosi, and I know he's saying that because it's also a little bit polarizing, right? So the goal is just to make as much as possible, right? So I believe that when you have a child, it's like, I make as much as possible while I am making sure I'm catching as many minutes as I can with my son, while I'm making sure I'm showing up in a way that when he later watches my videos, he will be proud of his mama. So, it just adds like so many qualifiers, as in I have like this ultimate goal, and I cannot reach my goal unless I'm meeting those check boxes, if that makes sense. And in that way, he makes me a lot more intentional, right? He takes out a lot of he eliminates a lot of temptations as well. A lot of like, things are completely taboo for me because I know that he's my main priority, right? So there's certain things I can't do because they're a certain time commitment, right? Or because I would probably also not just want to experiment with some things because I don't know how they would be perceived by him like later on. Like, and that this is, for example, how aggressive would I be in my messaging, marketing things, right? And so I think it just makes me very, very mindful, very intentional, and it gives everything a lot more meaning. And ultimately also, I don't know if you've noticed this from yourself, like there's this point of pain where you're in, when you are insecure about money. So when you're not knowing, next month after that, etc. But then there's this point where you kind of know I'm good, right? And then after this point where you know you're good, there are not so many things that can add a lot more meaning and drive to this. And I think having a child and knowing that you're building something for your family, it is adding a lot of gasoline to that fire, if that makes sense. And I'm thinking also how I want to raise him to be very resourceful, to have, like, I want to instill that in him a little bit, being this entrepreneur. So I think it makes me also think like, what kind of education setup do I want for him, right? How do I want him to learn? And so I think it influences like every area of our life, basically. He influences every area of the business, and the business influences every area of our life as well.
Yeah, like Evelyn, I just underline like superwoman. Like, this is actually insane. You're such a high level entrepreneur and a single parent for 6 months of the year. That's crazy. Like, that is super inspiring. And I'm sure he's going to be extremely proud when he grows up, like having his mom, like growing this business. And that's insane. Super cool. Nice. What would you say has been like the biggest transformation that has taken place in your life because of your entrepreneurial journey? Can be monetized, like, or your freedom or money, or what do you feel is like the biggest thing?
I think there are two things happening, always kind of in cycles, and they become truer and truer over time. So it's like almost like two patterns that become broken. So the one is, I've been saying that I want to be an author since before I was going to school. I was writing my first book when I was 8, and I always kind of knew that this is what I want to do. And then life added like so many layers of disbelief and self-doubt, and so kind of flipped into wanting to prove my worth. And so I think the more successful I become, the more layers of that onion get stripped back, and the more I kind of get back to the roots, and the more authentic I grow, if that makes sense. So that is a beautiful thing that it does for me. It allows me to really rediscover that essence of me, if that makes sense, and the true gifts that I can bring. And so I don't know where I read this, but it was like the first half of your life is about discovering what your gifts are, and the second half is giving them away. And so I feel like I'm just at that. I've really started to unwrap where I feel like, okay, this is truly what my gifts are. And so it just starts to shine through for me. I just start to feel a lot more clear around that. And the second thing is boundaries. So I've been, with the way I grew up with my mother, having boundaries was always a challenge for me. And so I think what entrepreneurship also keeps rubbing in my face is like, we can do it all and we can have it all, but we have to figure this thing out. Like how to set healthy boundaries and how to not create codependencies and how to understand what's mine and what is other people's stuff. Like this is an ongoing learning journey, and sure as hell, like my business will rub it in my face if I'm slipping. And I realize like it's a constant pattern. Like I keep recreating situations where I have to remind myself like, oh, that's another boundary thing. So I keep like learning this, and I feel like this is also a big part of my journey is fully understanding the whole boundary setting thing, because that's something where I feel like this is maybe when you build a business, I think we often build it because we want to escape the things or we want to escape dysfunction, right? Because we feel like, oh, if I'm just making enough money, I can just throw money at problems and then they will go away. And so if I'm just becoming successful enough, I actually don't have to look at those things. But then you realize in order to get there, you actually have to solve all of the things you don't want to look at. So I think it, like in a very real sense, it's like it just makes you eat the elephant that you're trying to avoid bit by bit, and then you eat that, or frog, right? You eat that frog and you're like, oh, that wasn't too bad. So I think that's the biggest gift of business, is like it forces you to really look at those things. And if you don't, you just keep resetting yourself, like in a video game, like you die and then, you what is this called? Like you come out at the same place and you have to go in again. I think that's the beautiful thing about business, that it's such a self-development reinforcer.
Nice. And like you mentioned, like self-doubt, which I know that everybody feels, right? Especially in the beginning of the entrepreneurial journey, but also throughout the entire journey. It's just chaos and doubt all over, and you just learn how to handle it better. But do you think, because when you said that, I thought back to like your grandmother, right? Do you think your grandmother has been like a big inspiration for you to kind of overcome that doubt and like go through it anyways? Would you agree with that, or?
Absolutely. I think that, listening to my grandparents' stories and see how they grew up. I mean, when my uncle was born, it was her first child. He was actually born with a twin inside him. And they had to, he had,
Oh, wow.
he had to have like a lot of surgery and medical help when he was a baby. And she kept telling me the story how they would bring him, the baby with a fever, from where they lived to Graz by feet in the winter through the snow. So can you imagine when you have your baby, right? When you're a father and you hold this little thing, the thought of carrying this fragile little treasure through 1.5 hours through a snowstorm, making sure it gets the medical help it needs, right? And you're just walking bare feet with, maybe having like the few potatoes that are left in your stomach. It just makes me like those stories and how they bred their own animals and how they didn't have diapers. And so it just is such a great reminder for how many tools and resources and opportunities we have. And it makes you so grateful. And it always makes me think that if they made it and we have so much convenience and we have so many opportunities, we kind of almost owe it to them to make it even better with everything that we have. So I think that what they really instilled in me was like this huge desire to be at least somewhat as resourceful and resilient and grateful, because they're also extremely grateful people. So appreciative. I gifted my grandpa for, I think it was his 85th birthday. I gifted him like a water cooker because he loves tea, and his water cooker was like really old. It still had these like open heating lines. And so I was always like afraid he will burn the house with it, because it also didn't stop boiling, right? So, so I gifted him this new water cooker, and he was grateful, but completely confused. He was like, but I have one. And I was like, yeah, but that one is better, right? And he was like, yeah, but that one still works. And so they just coming from such a place of appreciation for everything. And I think that that's definitely how I want to show up.
Super interesting. And so, like, obviously that has inspired you a lot, like during your entrepreneurial journey, like those stories of your grandparents, like that inspiration. But have you had any specific like mentors during the way that have guided you on that journey as well? You don't have to mention specific names unless you don't want to, but do you feel like has that helped you a lot as well by having mentors who have showed you the way?
I have learned a lot from a lot of different people. I think that, for example, like I said, Kat Howell was probably like one of the first inspirations that I really had. So I was, when she was doing her Facebook ads at Convert, I was really looking up to her. Laura Porty inspired me because she had a $7 membership. I think Julie Stoy and Kathy Olsen from Funnel Gorgeous, they pioneered pretty funnels. Like they were a huge inspiration. And so it was often not even me directly being a part of a program, but just seeing, certain female entrepreneurs really disrupting the space. My business partner, Jessa Bellman, is a huge inspiration for me. She was my student, and the way she grew and so fast, and the way she's holding herself, I learned like so much from her. I learned a ton from my members as well that were coming in and like growing really fast, and how they were holding themselves. I learned a lot from Layla Homosi especially when she had her YouTube channel where she was still doing like the long presentations in the beginning. So I'm also really grateful that they're going back to this format. Alex Ramosi also a lot. Stu McLaren, Kerry Green. Oh my goodness. There's Dan Henry. I learned a lot. I know he's very polarizing, but I mean, he has some genius ideas for offer creation. Like he really knows how to push people's buttons in when it comes to his offers, like also when it comes to how he shows up. Like there's a Sam recently, so many amazing things. Also from Andrew Kirby. So I feel like there's so many people in that space. We could sit for the rest of the hour where I would say, where I could tell you, people that have really inspired me and that I'm learning from. I think one of the biggest things is that you can and should learn from everyone in a way that you say, oh, I see what they're doing. For me and my vision and my values, what is something that I could take from that, right? So what is something that I could learn and make basically mine? So I think that was always something that I was also able to really do, to see the underlying mechanisms of what it is that's working for them and say, well, if I'm interpreting that for my specific use case, how would I do that? And I think that's also something that has really always helped me, was to be able to observe and then gratefully taking what's a good fit for me and leaving like all the rest, if that makes sense. I think that's also beautiful about school. I think with it being so accessible, you have the opportunity to learn from many different people, right? And I think real mastery comes from when you start to have your own visions, and then you can just borrow and plug and learn from everyone else. But again, you can't force that, like be around those people. You never know when you're picking up that post and you're like, holy cow, that's it, right? So I think that's a big mistake. People also tell me, oh yeah, I've canceled all my other subscription. I'm only following you now, Evelyn. And I'm like, don't do that. That's not a good idea. Right? I think there's true value in also getting that variety of perspectives. But you only can appreciate it if you're not rushed. Awesome. If you're rushed, you cannot appreciate it.
Awesome. Like I would love to hear what you think that people should focus on when they're just starting out. And I'm also very interested to learn more about your school community, the digital offer builders. So I would love to learn and hear about kind of what do you teach in there and why do you teach those things?
Mm-hmm. So digital offer builders is for me really skill building community around offer creation, right? So I want to empower people to make really outstanding offers, because I know it's the biggest leverage that we have when we're utilizing paid traffic, which was my main source. And I also, for sales always. And I also believe that if you're starting with the offer first, right? So and I'm even teaching in their sales page first method. So for everything I create, I write the sales page And if I'm not having a sales pitch because it's a strategic freebie, I'm writing the ad first, because I think it's a big mistake for people to come and create something people want, and then they're thinking about how do I sell it. I think if we're writing the sales pitch first, this is our vision building tool, so we can dream the best solution possible, and then we build something that lives up to that high expectation that we set, right? So that approach has always worked really well for me. And it compiles kind of everything I learned about, even creating transformation and packaging things and emotionally charging what you have created. And so I help people to do lead magnets, workshops, memberships, courses, programs, right? So basically picking a container, writing the sales page for it, then creating the offer, and then knowing how to run paid traffic to it. I think it's a good start for people to start with paid traffic, just because you can get that market feedback quickly, right? So very often, and this goes back to don't quit your job. It's better if you can make money in your job, right? You don't exude all your mental capacity, while you always want to be a valuable person, because that's just how you would want to hold yourself. You can take some of that money, and I recommend if you have $10 a day, that's fantastic, and put it first into audience building ads. Right? So you have the first offer you should always run is a strategic freebie, a free offer. And you use that with Facebook lead generation campaigns to grow your email list and a free community, or Instagram at the same time, right? I don't believe that everybody should have a free to paid school community. I think some people could directly have a paid mini community. But the first thing is all audience building, list building always. And then I recommend just start sending emails, ideally daily. Process what you're learning, process what you're going through, and send that to your audience. Like just getting in that habit of, now you have that strategic freebie that filters in the right type of people. They come in your world. Now you need to talk to them. Like every single day you need to talk to them. And I told you in the beginning, I'm a writer. And so just having that tool that every single day you sit down and you have your reflections, right? So here's what I'm working on and why, and here's what I'm learning and why, and here's how the takeaway from me to you. When you can have that skill, like that skill in itself is absolutely invaluable. So if you can get that system first into place, then you have an audience building a nurturing mechanism, and that's there. And then you can start plugging your offers, right? So, and that can be very organically. It's like, hey, today when I was working on my group coaching program, I actually sit down and I wrote about the pain points. And here's what I think the pain points are. What is your opinion? Hit the reply button. Just let me know, right? So you start to have that conversation. You start to plug in your offers, and then eventually you would want to launch them. And I think that's also how I grew my organic channels. And I don't have a lot. I have 40,000, roughly, a little bit lower than that on Instagram, and around 14,000 on YouTube. But they all kind of grew in reverse organic from those ads, because I would then just often repurpose the email, just screenshot it, picture of me before, screenshot of the email, and that's the content there, right? Or I would just record a YouTube video, just basically speaking out what I just wrote down. So it's somewhat of a cohesive thought, and then just put that on YouTube. And that second kind of leg of organic was enough to really, capture everybody that was flying around from the ads. And that was going back to being a mom, that was very sustainable for me, right? So it was something that I could do quickly and I could do consistently. And if you're thinking about, Hamza is really big. He came first. He was one place before me in the school games. And I think he did 86,000 monthly recurring revenue with 2.5 million subscribers. And I have 14, right? And so I think that there's many ways to build your audience. And for me, the way I'm teaching it was the most sustainable container, and the one where you get the most feedback the quickest. Because one of the crazy, or the most draining things is also when you feel like I'm screaming into this void and nothing is coming back. And I'm just sitting here creating something and there's nobody out there even caring. And with the ads, you at least can get like a much, much quicker feedback if you're on the right track. And I love those really short feedback loops, because they kind of reinforce that behavior of keep creating, which, when we look back, ultimately why people fail is because they give up. They just can't stick with it long enough. And I believe it's because they don't find ways to incentivize themselves, right? What I said in the beginning, I always find a way to incentivize myself. Like, figuring out how quickly I can do it, or, making it pretty because I like it, or saying, there's this really cool podcast from Max that I want to listen to it. If I'm doing this first now, I can allow myself to watch it, right? So I would always create like little rewards for myself. And with the ads, I also feel like that is the same. Like, is my freebie good? Well, let me run a few ads to it and see, okay, it's getting like a really good cost per purchase. I did something, like I made progress. There's the proof, right? And so kind of creating those fast feedback loops is for me a way to help people keep doing the thing long enough so that they actually can have those compounding returns.
I love that. And like one of the final things you said, right, was like people quit pretty much immediately, or a lot of people quit too early. And that's like a saying I have in my head, like win by default. I know that if I just stick to it for the long term, I will win by default because most people will just kind of quit anyways, right? So I 100% agree with that. And then I also really love what you said. I really love that concept where you're starting with the offer first. And that's basically the reason why Hormozy wrote his book, $100 Million Offers, that was the first book as well, right? That was a huge eye-opener for me, that it's not only like the item and the price, but it's the scarcity and the urgency and the bonuses and the risk reversals and all of these things, because that is like the essence of everything, right? That's where it happens. It's like, that's what everybody's going to see on the internet, in your ads, in organic. It is the offer, essentially. And it's going to determine if people are interested or not. So I love that.
I think it's also so important because people really struggle to have a vision for their business. And often they sell something they haven't thought and felt through. And I think when you start with the offer creation and you do it as deliberately as I do it with people, you get really clear as in who you're talking to, how you're creating transformation, how you're helping people, right? So, because I also create offers transformation based, right? So we map out the before, the after, the steps, the tangible deliverables that will get people to cross that step, right? So you gain a lot of clarity as in how you're actually helping people, and then gives you a lot of confidence, and it gives you a lot of messaging intelligence, right? So you start to really understand what you're doing and how you're helping, which counterintuitively enough, most people don't do. Most people that have not thought through enough what they're selling and why they're selling it so that they effectively can talk about it. And this is also why it's so important, because it helps people to form that vision and have that clarity. Most of the time, it's a lack of clarity, and nobody can instill that in you without pressing something on you that you're not. So when you start with the offer first and you're taking that time to fully map it out based on your story, based on what you want to see, that is the pillar that you need for everything else. And even if you don't want to run ads, just for the content that you create, right? Because people throw out random content. Doesn't help you. If you're, especially, yes, for some people it helps to make some income claims or whatever. But to me, that's not ethical marketing. The people that do know how to get content with their clients from the content as well are the ones that kind of reverse engineer that from the offer too. Because otherwise what you're talking about is just so far away from what you're selling that it's really hard to bridge that gap, right?
So instead of like building your product, building a website, fixing the logo, building something that you think that people want, and then launching it, and then realize that, hey, people actually don't buy this, you start with the offer first. And you can even verify the offer even before you don't even have a product by running some ads and like making sure that people actually buy it. And then you use that as the ground base or the foundations to actually build out the actual service then, or the product.
Yeah,
it's genius.
I work a lot with pre-selling, but I also want to say that some people are not like confident enough that they can then deliver on it. So for those people that are really scared about it, I always recommend building a minimum viable product. And so I also show people, what is the minimum you would want to include. And that is actually also the maximum you'd want to include, because the rest you would want to build with people. Because that's also something that I bet you know this from your community. When you build out the resources, you probably build it out based on what your members need, right? And it becomes something completely different than what you would have probably put in there based on what you already know about school.
Yes, 100%. And that's something I learned from Sam back in his up level course. That is like promote as you build, or sell as you build. He called it. So like you build it out as you get people through it, because you get feedback from your members. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's really, really
Awesome.
huge.
Just to round up the episode today, where can people learn more about you? You've mentioned your YouTube and your Instagram and your school community as well. Like, where if people want to learn more about you and join your community and follow you on social, like what's the easiest place to go to or search for?
I think that probably if you're interested in joining our community, the Offer Builders, that's on school. If you just want to start learning for free, my YouTube channel is probably the best place to start. If you want to include it, Max, I have a niche training that we could give to your audience. I'm not sure if that would be helpful. Yeah, that's up to you.
100%.
Then
Most definitely.
we could link it to them. That's always like a really good starting point, because people are like, well, I need to create an offer, but I don't even know my niche. That training helps you to find your niche based on your story. And so a little bit of the things that we talked about today, like my backstory, you can actually also see in there, and you can see how kind of from my backstory, I found my niche and what alternative niches I could have chosen. And that I think will give you the first clarity where you say, okay, this is the area where I can create my first offer, and then you can take it from there.
Awesome. I love it. That makes it the easiest way it can be for the listeners. Because my next question would be, like, what advice would you give to people to do next? But that's basically it. Just click the link in the description then, and then that will basically guide them. That's perfect. I love it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect, Evelyn. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was amazing. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.